Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. DRDGold says it has spent more money on vegetating tailings dams than it has paid dividends to shareholders in the last 10 years, and is seeing its dump vegetation efforts going up in smoke. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer has a story. Welcome, Martin.
Morning, Sashnee.
So what are the frustrations the company is having with the vegetation process?
You know, if you drive around Joburg and you look at some of these sites where they've revegetated, you can see how verdant those sites are. I mean, we have been passing these, and I have for decades. They've always done some sort of rehabilitation, but it's never been as dense as it is now. Because what has happened is the mines recommended a distance that should be kept from the sites going back to the 40s, saying if we've got a dump, make sure residences and industry can't get closer than a certain distance. But of course, with time, people have moved in large numbers, and particularly in that Riverlea area, I mean, people were sitting right on top of mine dumps. Well, when I say on top, surrounding them. We even at one stage had a drive-in on top of the mine dump. It was called Top Star. But vegetation has had to be stepped up, and so it's cost a lot more. And it costs, you know, hundreds of thousands of rands per hectare, because it's got to be accompanied by irrigation, particularly for the first 3 years, so that you can get the moisture that's needed to get these going. So you've got to spend a pretty penny to make sure that you do what's right. Now, the company that's doing it, DRDGold, is one of the longest standing companies on the stock exchange, so it does bear sort of responsibility going back in history. But it is putting its best foot forward. There's no one else in Joburg that puts out a cent to pay for any of this. So, you know, even when it started in 2007, it was on a fairly big budget of, you know, millions, tens of millions of rands that have gone into making sure that you not only vegetate the slopes, but you vegetate the tops so that you don't have this dust. You suppress the dust, and you do it in a much denser way than they were doing it in the past, because they didn't realize people were moving so close. But what they're seeing now is that for some reason or other, these wonderful looking pastures, and we had some pictures in our video which show how verdant these things are, but they're also susceptible to fire. And people, for some reason or other, nobody knows why, are setting them alight. And when you set those things alight, you set back the whole vegetation process, because also destroyed are the irrigation systems. So you then can create dust. And what has been happening with DRD, they've been suppressing that dust pretty well. And you know, the measurements that they've got a lot of points of measurement, a lot of points of monitoring. They've never been in such a good position, because they sort of halve the dust factor every year, and they've been doing it over a period of time. So they're close to closing that dust gap, but now it could be reopened if people are setting fire to these look like pasture lands on the side of the slimes dams. It'll mean that there's going to be the problem of dust again, which would upset a lot of the residents, and I'm sure upset a lot of the industry, because once those winds start blowing, you know, it can be devastating to live close to these dumps.
Now, DRDGold is facing severe criticism from the Benchmarks Foundation to suppress dust as it is affecting surrounding communities, and the company has reached out to the NGO.
Yes, you know, that non-governmental organization, Benchmark Foundation, it is a church NGO, and they're supposed to protect people from particularly multinational mining groups. They have gone into 4 areas, Soweto areas, but Riverlea is not quite Soweto, and they've studied the situation and put through a lot of questionnaires to the people living in those areas, and discovered that they are complaining about this dust, and saying that they have got respiratory disease as a result of this dust. So they have put out a report, you know, saying that action needs to be taken. What DRDGold is saying, look, local authorities aren't dealing with this issue, provincial government isn't really dealing with this issue, we're the only ones dealing with this issue. It would be great if we could work together. So, you know, they've opened the door and said, here's an invitation, come to see us. It's also a bit difficult for Benchmarks Foundation, because they don't want to be seen to be associating directly with a corporate structure. You know, their job is to go through the community. So that's probably what they're going to have to stick to. And there'd have to be another structure created where people can work together, because there's no point in fighting each other at this point. And also if the communities could maybe put out fires that are set alight and discourage anyone from setting fire to these, it would help as well in their own interests. So everybody needs to get together to work in their own interests. This is a legacy issue. It's with us. At one stage, tourists used to come to Joburg to have a look at the mine dumps. Now you can hardly see any of that gold-bearing slime anymore, because they've always tried to cover it with vegetation because of the dust factor. If we have the situation of these being burned down, it's going to set us right back to the starting point, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So hopefully the communities, the NGOs and the company can work together, and I see that the company's opened its door wide and said, let's do it.
Now 3 new reclamation sites have been commissioned, and the 4th is expected to be commissioned in 2018.
Yes, so that's important, because unless there's profits made by the companies, there's going to be no money to spend. So it's important that the company DRDGold, which has built up particular expertise in extracting, like you can compare it, say 1 million people pass through an airport security. The gold is only in 173 of those people. So you're picking up 173 items in 1 billion items to get that gold. It's not an easy situation. And DRDGold has got this down to a fine tea. In fact, they're continually improving the way they recover all these things. So it's important for South Africa. It's got to be profitable. That exercise has got to be profitable. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a dust problem, particularly if people burn the things down. So they are now, you can see, opening up, wanting to have more throughput go through their plant at Ergo. That plant is in good shape from a technological point of view. They keep on uplifting its technological prowess, and in fact they probably would be able to show the rest of South Africa, where there are a lot of activities building up now in tailings retreatment, because there's a lot of money locked up, and it's, if you can recover that, it's fairly low cost, because you don't have to delve deep, dark and dangerously into the ground. You can get it on surface. So it's in South Africa's best interest for everybody to work together now. And there you see they're continuing to expand, wanting to do much more. This is an indication that there could be a lot more profit coming out of this. Let's use some of that profit to make sure we solve all the problems, because they also unlock land. When they remove dumps, and you can see they've removed dumps in that Riverley area, they've actually not only vegetate, but they also remove dumps entirely, as we've seen them doing at Riverley. That then releases land for development. There are certain parts of the release that the land is very valuable. So it could be a situation where in an urban area where you need to expand, particularly if our economic growth comes up at some stage, you'd want to make sure that you can use that land. They are making it open for use. And their new deposition site at Withok down in Brakpan is also very well organized from a point of view of the environment. So there's been a huge upgrade in all of this. The potable water that they're using is really being minimized, because we know that with this sort of retreatment of the dumps, you need a lot of water. It's no good taking water from Rand water. You must use, they use sewage water, and they're starting to use acid mine drainage as well. So that's fantastic. That'll reduce the strain on potable water. We're short of water here, and so that's another consideration. They've got their eye on that ball. So they've really pre-thought a lot of the problems. They're on top of them, but if people burn the place down, that is going to be a real setback.
Thanks for speaking with us,
It's
Mark.
a great pleasure, Sashnee.
That's it for today. Join us again next week for more news and analysis on South Africa's mining industry.